Uh, Now I'll come to the. Have I taken more time than I was expected to? Uh,
It's slightly on the longer side, but that's okay for now, I think.
okay,
Nobody's leaving, so it appears that everybody's interested.
okay, thanks. So I'll try to summarize everything, but I don't want to do injustice to a very significant thinker in this. So maybe some more time, and I'll finish with this. So. Coming to Dr. Ambedkar, again we find the entire context of nationalist politics is changed. Uh, Ambedkar returns in 1917. He's trained in Columbia. He's trained in economics and law and sociology. And he is somebody who is significant. I'll not go through all the issues, all the events in his life, which I've mentioned over here. Please go through, have a look on whatever is written over here. Um, we find that at least two or three very major instances or major issues that he raised, we need to address. We find that, of course, he is somebody who starts a journal, Mook Nayak, later Bahishkrit Bharat. He is somebody who's also collaborating with British in the sense he's participating in the legislative process, is nominated a number of times since 1926. He's part of Bombay Legislative Council. He has made very interesting work over there. Uh, he's somebody who is responsible uh, for addressing the issue of caste in such a disciplined way, a very systematic sociological analysis of the caste system, and also responsible for politicizing the issue of caste. Now, what does that mean? All these both dimensions I'll try to explain. We find that his first very important analysis of castes comes as part of his postgraduate dissertation, where he writes this caste thesis called Caste in India, where to a large extent he also supports the idea of Aryan invasion, which resulted into a subordination of the local culture and etc. etc. So he, by and large, supports that kind of an argument. But later in 1930s, he comes up with another work, and which is very significant, and I'll certainly recommend to read that book. And that was meant to be a speech, but the invitation was withdrawn, and his speech, which was ready, was later published. The title of that speech was Annihilation of Caste. Now, in this particular tract, we find that he basically comes up with very interesting argument. We find that he tells us that in Indian society, at a particular point of time, there existed a struggle, and he cites references to all this analysis, a struggle between Brahminism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. Now, here you'll find that he basically differentiates between Brahminical Hinduism and Hinduism. So the practices which existed in earlier times, they used to ascribe the Varna status after you are trained into one particular profession. So it is like convocation, that you are trained in one particular profession and then a Varna status is ascribed to you. But with the Brahminical texts coming up, with the Brahmins attempting to establish their hegemony, they they start ascribing the Varna status by birth. And this rather creates a hierarchical system of Varna. Now, caste is something which was identified with occupation, which existed as a system of division of labor. But with the emergence of Varna system, this division of labor resulted into division of laborers. And there emerged a system of hierarchy. And this system of hierarchy was legitimized by the Hindu text, particularly the text of Manusmriti, where if you try to change your profession, if you do something which you are not supposed to do, then there are very severe punishments. So scripture expects, as member of a particular caste or particular varna, you are expected to behave in a particular way. Your social relations are determined in particular way. So if you are not acting in that particular way, there are severe punishments for this life and for future lives also. Another very significant point that he makes, first, as I said, is legitimizing this system with the scripture, with the Hindu scriptures. That is one point. Second, very important aspect he underlines is the intersectionality of caste and gender. He actually calls he looks at this looks at it in this way, that he calls women as the doorkeepers of caste system, not willingly, they are not voluntarily playing the role of doorkeepers of caste system, but they are the kind of restrictions that are put on women. The entire idea of women's purity and with whom a woman can marry and can't marry. Of course, she can marry only in her own caste, and man can certainly have relations with women of other castes, though they are not legitimized, but then still there are some kind of arrangements made and some kind of descriptions given to children by born out of such kind of relations. But a woman marrying somebody from a lower varna is liable for severe punishment. And he tells us that putting restrictions on women by creating the entire idea of pativratya, the entire idea of purity and chastity, what was done was the entire effort for consolidation of caste system. And the caste in this way basically became very intact, because you can't marry outside your caste. If you marry outside your caste, that marriage is not considered as marriage. So this system of this endogamous kind of marriage system, system of endogamy basically, was created to consolidate the caste system. So on the one hand, you have scriptures, the entire Purusha Sukta, which describes Brahmins born out of head and etc. etc. So basically, because the Shudras are born from leg, their status is low, and Ati Shudras, they are not part of the Hindu hierarchy in the Hindu Varna system. Secondly, about this particular issue of intersectionality. And the third very important uh, point that he makes, particularly reference to which I made, the existence of Buddhists here. And there, another very important text he writes, who were the Shudras, where he explains that the war which took place between the Brahminical Hinduism and the Buddhist kings were defeated, and then they were enslaved, they were excommunicated, they were made to leave their villages, they were disarmed, and they were given lower status. And this particular section of the practitioners of Buddhism who were enslaved and pushed outside the villages were the people who lost their varna status or who were made to lose their varna status, and they are the Ati Shudras, they are the present day Dalits, they are, of course, uh, he is calling them as depressed classes, the word which Shinde had coined. So he uses that particular word. And that is something which, in the later phase in his life, we find makes him think of converting to Buddhism, because that is going back to um, a frame from which they had come, and this is a religion which is a more rational kind of a religion. Here we do find that in earlier stage of his efforts to annihilate caste, he does attempt to temple entry in Kalaram temple entry, Satyagraha. He does attempt to assert the spiritual rights of the Atishudras or the Dalits. But that right is not acknowledged. Uh, Prima facie, they are told that yes, it appears that the caste Hindus were ready to acknowledge that right, but ultimately what ultimately turned out is that when in that Rath Yatra was moving, the untouchables were they were beaten very badly. They were not allowed to enter the temple. And Ambedkar, almost for 3 to 4 years, was doing all sorts of legal efforts to assert their right, the right of um, the so-called untouchables to enter the temple. But when that didn't happen, then we find that in 1935 at Yeula Parishad, he appeals all his colleagues to withdraw all the temple entry agitations, and he declares that even if I'm born as Hindu, I will not die as Hindu. So he at this particular point of time finds something which is very intrinsic to the Hindu philosophy, which prevents people from changing their psyche in annihilating caste. And for this, it becomes necessary for him to change the religion and accept Buddhism, which he believes is based on three principles of prajna, which is reason, karuna is compassion, and maitri, which is friendship. And he believes that these principles are broader in appeal than the three principles arising out of French Revolution, that is liberty, equality, and fraternity. So that is one very significant line that he takes to annihilate caste. Secondly, which I very briefly referred, was politicization of caste. He doesn't look this as an issue of social reform. He wants politicization, and therefore his slogan, the famous slogan that educate, agitate and struggle, this particular struggle, or his slogan, or his entire attempt um, uh, to assert for political participation, which we find uh, right from his statement before the Southborough Commission, later his role in the Roundtable Conference, the entire issue, it was taken up in Pune Pact, the way in Constitution he thinks about the political participation of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. So unless and until the so-called untouchables are they get properly represented and self-represented, then only there is a possibility of their emancipation. So we find that one aspect is politicization of caste. Second aspect, cultural and spiritual domain, which again we find thread connecting with Phule, who's talking about counterculture. he finds it necessary to change the entire religious framework itself, which is shaping the social relations as well as the psyche of uh, the caste-ridden communities and oppressed sections of Indian society. So I have tried to give a, a, a brief sort of, I would say, orientation. I really don't know if I was able to uh, do justice to all the aspects of this particular issue, but at least the major, I would say, uh, uh, personalities who have shaped the anti-caste struggles. I've tried to uh, present their ideas in this presentation, and I hope to respond to your questions and address those issues which probably I was not able to touch in this presentation. Thank you.